Hi there. In this lecture we see Boris Fischer with the black pieces playing his favourite Sicilian Najdorf. Sometimes the Najdorf can seem scary at times and you don't want to castle maybe too soon. Sidney Norman Bernstein was playing against Boris Fischer in this game in the 1957 US Championship round 4. We see e4 and Fischer plays the Sicilian defence. Knight f3, d6, d4, c takes, knight takes d4. So black gets an all-important semi-open c-file, and white has that semi-open d-file, and it's just interesting the imbalances that this opening creates. So we see knight f6, knight c3, a6, the Najdorf variation, and we see bishop g5, e6, f4, and now bishop e7, queen f3, and now knight bd7, not routinely castling. This is an important note in my view. If black castles, it seems in theory at least, white should be able to get something from this position with an aggressive castling queenside. For example, this situation with b3 suppressing the b file is interesting for white. There should be a small advantage at least. Another try, instead of bishop d3, of casting immediately and queen g3. Again, this looks as though it's kind of scary for black sometimes, but there are variations here. You might think, well, this is doomed, isn't it? Kingscrusher, knight d5, knight takes d5, taking off the bishop. There's a fantastic variation discovery here with knight takes e5, which I find fascinating. Bishop takes, queen takes. So it seems as though black's just a piece down, but there's knight g4, and this is all forced. Bishop takes, and then we can win the exchange. And actually, this starts to become a bit murky. It's only a small edge for white. So amazing resources behind the scenes here, even if black did castle immediately. So it's not totally terrible to castle here. We see knight bd7, white castles queenside, and now queen c7, g4, and now b5. So this exerts naturally influence over the e4 square, and sometimes b4 can be a useful nudge. We see bishop g2. It will be a disaster for white to play e5, as bishop b7 skewers the queen and the rook. So this situation is unpalatable, for example. White is lost. So bishop g2, bishop b7, pinning down the e-pawn. Now rook he1. In fact here, it seems as though a3 might be slightly better. And this situation, though, with knight c5 isn't so bad for black. There's a lot of pressure emerging on e4. So it's about equal. So we see rook he1. And Fischer's very provocative. It's a principle generally you want to castle early. So the king's in the centre. And Fischer plays b4. In my view, this is provocative. And maybe Fischer did half expect a piece sacrifice. And white did indulge knight d5. So very, very interesting. E takes, e takes. Now the king's stuck in the centre, right? If castling, rook takes e7. So Fischer plays king f8. So should black be able to survive this situation here after knight f5? That protects d5 as well. It hits e7. There are issues to solve. If knight c6, that's also dangerous. Rook e8 seems okay. For example, this scenario, it seems as though black survives a little bit longer and black actually has the advantage. So anyway, and also, by the way, rook takes e7, just in case you're wondering, is mostly harmless. This is, after rook c8 actually threatens c2, you know, we can tie down the queen and black's better. So knight f5 was tried. Fischer plays rook e8. Actually palatable was also bishop d8. It's not that strong, white's position, to be forcing matters totally. So this situation is actually okay for black as well. But rook e8 was played, queen e3. And now, yeah, there's things like knight takes e7. So we have bishop d8 hitting the queen. Queen d4, it looks like a very nice central queen. And now we see bishop c8, which has an idea sometimes of taking out f5 in some variations. We see bishop h4, now knight c5. So clearly an idea is bishop takes f5. We see now white playing violently with knight takes g7 and then g5. The bishop perches on f5 looking at c2. So sometimes in this position knight b3 could be threatened for queen takes c2 mating. So there is a killer common square that white needs to be concerned about here. After g takes, Fischer actually plays an amazing move here, which maybe a lot of us wouldn't really consider too much, or consider a bit too scary. Can you guess what Fischer played here? If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video. This game is not so positionally instructive. It seems as though if you do want to play the Sicilian knight off, you do get sometimes these razor sharp positions. It turns out Fischer's move is actually kind of good, king h6, compared to alternatives. If king f8, then rook takes, as an example, check. And we can see after bishop h3, actually there's some real dangers here. For example, the king's exit route is cut off, and this g-file could be actually crushing, for example, like this, and there's checkmate. So black does have something to worry about here on king f8, for sure. If we look at this again, instead of a5, queen a5 is better though. But even so, with queen g3, rook e1, this is actually a rather dangerous scenario for black. White should be better. So king h6, really interesting. Even though there's a bishop g5, it's not used. It seems as though that could be mostly harmless. Bear in mind, after king g6, black has rather threats like knight b3 and queen takes c2. So white is a little bit tied down. So we see queen c4, which extinguishes that threat idea. And now knight d7, challenging the queen. And in fact, the f6 pawn is hit as well. So white's kind of tied down here, and the queen's come off. So that's a bit of a relief for Bobby Fischer. Yeah, but yeah, if the queen moved, maybe f6, it seems safe enough to take. Just about. So we see queen takes c7. Bishop takes, bishop f3, still some dangers, bishop d8, we see check, and now this looks dangerous. It looks as though Fischer's playing with a lot of danger, but bishop takes, saying, well, go on, where is your discovered check here? There is no decent discovered check. After check, we see the king just going to h6, bishop takes, knight takes, black's just really, it's starting to merge, just black's a piece up, and white has very little compensation. This move back is interesting. And now rook e3, knight e4 hitting the rook, f5 sealing any f5 idea from white. And this does look like it's a piece up. And this stops any h5 nuisance. So yes, it looks like a clear piece up without too much compensation for white at all here. Nice piece up, taking out centre pawn, and it's all over. And this kind of game, white played unsoundly. Well, Fischer played like a machine, really. In his defence, pardon me, Fischer played like a machine. How many of us would play the king to h6? Wow. But I think this really hinges on the later threats. Bishop g5. Just put it on the board. Bishop g5, rook g1 is too slow. Knight b3, and queen c2. So white has something to deal with, for sure. And if king b1, there are also interesting tactical possibilities with bishop takes c2 here, and knight e6 hitting the queen. There are very interesting tactical possibilities behind the scenes. So it's not that easy to checkmate, it seems, the king here. Very tricky scenario. But yeah, this takes some... It seems as though this is extremely well calculated from the young Bobby Fischer, this king h6. What is the instructive philosophical point, though, from such a technical game? Yeah, I think to play the Sicilian knight off, you need to be very, very good at calculating variations and preserving your king's safety. I think that may be the major takeaway for me at least. And also bear in mind your latent threats as well, to try and press down to make sure your opponent hasn't got a total free hand against your king. Okay. Thanks very much. Hi guys, I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you want more Bobby Fischer content, check out my Kingscrusher TV page. And if you go to the bottom of it, it starts at the bottom with 1970 to 1992. I also have 2 other Bobby Fischer courses. I found him absolutely fascinating to study. So there's 1956 to 62, early in his career, and there's 1963 to 68. So I hope you find those interesting. You might want to check them out, all the free samples. And I hope you really enjoyed this video. Comments, questions, likes, shares, always appreciated. Thanks very much.